Hello and welcome to the Hibs Observer afternoon debrief with myself, Liam Bryce, joined today by Craig Nisbet at 9125 Analysis to discuss all the latest from Easter Road. This episode is brought to you by our sponsors, MPH Boilers and Weissman. MPH Boilers is a multi-award winning family-run plumbing and heating company covering all of mainland Scotland. And they were recently crowned Family Business of the Year at the 2024 Fife Business Awards, partnering with Weissman, a German engineered, highly awarded boiler manufacturer. They make a perfect match for homes across Scotland. So if you've been asleep all weekend and you've seen Craig on your screen there and thinking, oh no, Hibs must have got beat again at the weekend, then please do not panic. He has joined me to discuss a 4-0 win over Peterhead, one that secured Hibs' passage into the last 16 of the Premier Sports Cup, where they will travel to Celtic Park. A bit on that cup draw later on, but first of all, Craig, thanks for joining us as always. How are we?
I'm good, thanks, mate. Yeah, I'm really good. I know it was a wee bit squeaky bum time, a wee bit at the game at the weekend, but glad we made it through, and I'm sure we'll get to the draw in a second. But I'm looking forward to the game at the weekend and kicking off the league campaign.
Yeah, of course, Premiership action starts on Sunday for Hibs, not Saturday, with St Mirren playing in Europe. We'll that later on. But obviously, we'll start with the game on Saturday. A 4-0 win. I mean, as you say, it got maybe a wee bit too close for comfort just based on what Queen's Park were doing to Celtic Hearts, which I think Hibs could probably have done without. Apparently, we heard there was messages being passed on, and I think you could tell with the way. I think when the third and fourth goals went in, there wasn't too much fuss made over it. It was pick the ball up back to the halfway line because there's a fair chance that we might need more goals here. That fourth goal ended up being pretty critical in the end because there was only one goal difference in it. If it had gone to goals scored, I think Queen's Park had scored more. Good to see in that sense. As I said, we'll talk about the draw a wee bit later on. But I mean, what did you make of the game itself, and what did you kind of, again, we're sort of getting up to the league campaign, we're trying to glean as much as possible from what David Gray is trying to do with this side. So obviously there's usual caveats about level of opposition, but I mean we can still get an idea of the things that he's trying to implement, the kind of principles of what he wants his Hibs team to be. So I mean, what were your takeaways from Saturday's game?
Yeah, I mean, obviously in terms of the lineup, he went as strong as I think he can at this stage of the season, and the players that we brought in. Obviously, O'Hora going off was a bit of a blow, but with it being an impact injury, hopefully he'll be fit for the weekend. But Peterhead, to be fair to them, they came like teams will do at Easter Road this season. They've come, they've sat back, and it's up to Hibs to break them down. And I think over the past couple of seasons, that's where we've kind of struggled a little bit, is breaking teams down. We've always maybe done okay getting the ball out from the back and into the final third. That's where we've tended to struggle. And I do think getting early goals is going to be really important for us. I think, obviously Miller's goal was, maybe a bit of a fluke, but I think it just seems to settle the team. And I suppose that is maybe something for David Gray to think about, is just if we don't get that early goal, just how mentally the team manage themselves going into that. But no, in terms of the game, I think what we're trying to do is fairly obvious at the moment. We're pressing quite high up, we're forcing it wide, we're trying to win it back like Miller or Obita, and then what we're doing, which I like, is we're just being really direct and we're just going forward straight away. And we're gambling, we're keeping Molotnikov and Boyle quite high up, we're leaving Vente high up. So it means that we're able to hit that forward pass, hopefully get it to stick or get it in behind. And the good thing, I think, by the way, he's kind of flipped the midfield a little bit, and we've just got maybe Newell in the first half and the second, and Levitt after that. They're quite clearly sitting deep as a number 6, and that's allowing the fullbacks to go higher, but it's also allowing Campbell, Mariah Welsh in the first into the second half, and even Amos when he came on. It's kind of giving them license to get higher up the pitch and get closer to Vente. And I think I put a little thread out this morning. You can kind of see that I think there's just a lot more clarity for the players, so they know if they win it back, they go, they know who can go, who can attack. They're obviously trying to get those numbers into the box. And the goal that Mariah Welsh scored, having watched it back, he wins the ball deep in our half, pops it to Levitt. It kind of goes wee up, back and through to Jair, who does well. It goes to Obita, and Obita crosses it in, and it's Mariah Welsh on the end of that. And I can't think too many times of our midfielders doing things like that and getting from box to box. So I like that a lot. And yeah, just the fact that we're direct in the wide areas, we are creating a lot of chances, we're pulling the ball back, and I'd like Vente to score more. He had a couple of good chances again. I think we are creating lots of chances for him. I do think he needs a bit of competition just to maybe sharpen him up a little bit. But certainly, obviously, as you said at the start, it's the opposition, the level of opposition. But I do quite like that we've got this quite clear blueprint in what we're trying to do. And I think David Gray, for what he's got at the moment and what he's got at his disposal, I think he's getting the best out of that.
Yeah, so he's kind of sort of making. I mean, obviously, we know that he's after more players. Kind of needs more players, but he's playing to folks' strengths, really, isn't it? I think, and which could you argue maybe that wasn't always the case last season?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think with certainly if you look at with Vente in particular, he needs bodies around him. Last season he spent a lot of it just running around, and we weren't able to quite get the ball to stick with him. And even when Marcondes and Mizian came in, that obviously changed things a lot for the team, and there was that little change of shape from Montgomery as well. But I think with the signings that we've made and the players that have been brought back in, like Campbell getting more of a role and things like that, I think he is, where he's got us quite settled. I think we do look quite resolute at the back. I think the signings have helped with that as well. Again, we've not really been fully tested yet, and I think St Mirren will give us a really, really good test in that opening game. But yeah, I think he's making use of what we got. He's playing to people's strengths. If you look, I know we talked about Josh Campbell at the tail end of the season coming back in and how he's done in this pre-season. You can see actually watching it back on Hibs TV and seeing the kind of wider pitch shot, you can just see that as soon as that ball goes out, Vente's pressing, because he now knows that actually I'm going to have backup from Campbell and Boyle and Milotnikov. People know what they're doing. And I think we've got strength in the wide areas with Milotnikov and Boyle for different reasons, but then Miller and Obita and Cadden when he's fit as well. So I think it makes sense that we try and utilise those wide spaces and then get bodies into the middle. I mean, it sounds simple, and in some regards it is, but it's, I think credit has to go to David Gray and the coaching staff so far, just the way that they've taken a team that had been struggling. He's not had too many signings, and he's managing to get, like, you can see some quite clear principles and stuff coming through. And I think with a few more additions that we'll be in a good place.
Yeah. Let's talk about Dylan Vente for a bit, because I mean, he gets a hat-trick in that first outing. Again, caveats about the level of opposition, but I think I can remember sort of thinking at the time, right, well, okay, it's not, he's not as if he's banged in 3 against Celtic or Rangers or Hearts, but I mean, I think to me I thought it would be a kind of case of, strikers probably, I wouldn't have thought really care, who the goals come against. If goals are coming, then that boosts his confidence. But I think, his movement's good. Some of his link-up play is good. He seems to be in areas where he's more comfortable with. But I don't know about you. I think when I watch him in front of goal still at the moment, I don't see a guy who's yet playing with a lot of confidence. I don't know how you're seeing it at all, but for me, it's as though he's not quite in that kind of... he's still thinking about it quite a lot when chances come his way, and you can see the frustration. I think, especially a couple on Saturday after there was one he kind of hit straight at the keeper after he'd been played into the box. Does he look to you as though he's maybe still lacking a wee bit of confidence in front of goal?
Yeah, I think so. I think, like you're saying, his link-up's been far better. I think he is getting less, there's less pressure on him to be chasing the ball down as much. It's a bit more structured. So in theory, he should have, a little bit more energy and legs to get onto these chances and score. Yeah, I see with his fit, like he's had a couple of headers, I think one at the tail end of the Queen's Park, like one during the Queen's Park game, Celtic game as well, where, he's getting himself into these good positions. He's throwing himself at the ball and, he's hitting the post, hitting the bar, dragging it a little bit wide. So he's getting in the right areas with the ball at his feet. He seems to be in this position where I feel like he's sort of scuffing a lot of his shots, or he's dragging them wide. And I don't know if he's getting into these positions and he's a bit nervous about it, or he's apprehensive because he knows that he's not been scoring as much and he wants to score. So he's maybe overthinking the finish, so to speak. He doesn't look very, very natural, sort of when he's in there. But, and it sounds a bit cliched, but he is getting himself into those positions, and I think, I suppose from my point of view, I'm looking at the team going, well, we're actually creating a lot of chances. The pressure is on him to score, but that's why we're all crying out for a striker, somebody else to come in and give a bit of competition. Because I think at the moment, whereas in the past, if you're a striker joining Hibs, especially last season, you might have been like, I'm not really sure I'm going to get many chances here or anything created for me. Whereas I think if you look at these early games in pre-season, I think we've created quite a lot of chances for him, and that's where I do think he maybe needs that little bit of competition and also just a bit of a breather as well. Like I know we'll probably touch on the squad and stuff in a wee while, but David Gray, he's in a position like he can't really take him off because no striker on the bench, and I think if he takes him off, especially in games like Kelty when we're chasing the game. Saturday when we needed to keep outscoring to make sure we got through, even though Vente might be knackered, might be struggling, if he takes him off, the fans are going to kick off, and probably quite rightly so. So I think Vente's probably also a bit fatigued as well, from this pre-season, because unlike most of the other players, he's kind of not had a bit of a breather.
Yeah, he's probably, it's a good point. His involvement. I mean, I don't know the exact number of minutes of who's played what in pre-season, but he's got to be right up there. But I mean, again, unless somebody's brought in before the end of the week, and even if they are brought in before the end of the week, you think he will be the guy who leads the line at St Mirren. So for his sake, you kind of hope that he gets off to a kind of positive start, maybe a couple of goals early in the Premiership campaign, just to kind of take the burden off the team and then the burden off his own shoulders as well, because sometimes he looks to me sometimes like a guy who is carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. I don't know if that's just his general demeanour and body language, but it would be, for the amount of work that he put in, and especially for the kind of amount of sacrifices I think he made for the team last season. I think he is somebody who deserves a wee bit of luck to turn, and he's doing a lot of the right things, as you say. It's just those finishes sometimes kind of snatching at them, maybe just not kind of in the zone, as it were. He's not kind of flowing with it. He's thinking about it too much. So we'll see what happens there. I mean, in terms of just kind of last maybe few points of the weekend's game, I thought to me it looked as though Dylan Levitt made a good impact when he came on Saturday, and he was maybe one who got a bit of criticism after the Kelty game. I mean, I seen maybe people talking about the tempo that he was playing at, is kind of. He has got that kind of relaxed style about him at times. But for me, I felt like he came on and he made a kind of positive difference in terms of keeping the tempo up. He seemed, for me, looked to be playing at a kind of higher tempo. In fact, one of the kind of first things he did was he won the ball back, pressing pretty much straight after he came on, a bit more intensity about his game. I mean, I feel like there's no point going back over, the kind of usual talking points when it comes to Dylan Levitt, as in like he's got all the talent, which he does. Technically, he's great. But I mean, for you, were you impressed with him? And obviously, he's kind of came in and out of the team over the Premier Sports Cup campaign and pre-season. I mean, and I think he's definitely got the ability to play every week. But I think, what do you think he needs to do to be in David Gray's team on a regular basis?
I think it actually started, against the Kelty game. Like rewatching it, he didn't perform as poorly as I kind of thought watching it live.
I actually thought he was fine that day. To be honest,
he was fine. Yeah, I think it just, I think there's just so much expectation on him. I think fans they know he's got a strike on him. We know he's creative, and I think there's times where if he's moving the ball side to side and I think sometimes, especially if it's a game that we're chasing, people can just get a bit frustrated with him. Actually, I know it's a friendly against Watford, but I actually thought when he came on then as well, he did really, really well, and he sort of put himself about. He was quite energetic, and it did carry into the Peterhead game. When he came on, I think his first involvement was the goal I described where Mariah Welsh wins it back. He straight away, it's like a really good forward pass straight to Jair, and then it's after that goal from kickoff. he like the ball works wide, the team are pressing over, and he times it brilliantly. Like he just times his press brilliantly, pinches it. I think he does a 1-2 maybe, and he drives down the line, and he actually cuts it back to Vente, who has a good chat, hits the shot straight at the goalkeeper. And I think the other video I clipped this morning was again him in possession, and he just sort of moves the ball a little bit. He kind of pauses on it, and then Campbell makes a run, and he just plays a nice little line breaking pass for Campbell, and it's actually a really poor cutback from Campbell to Vente, ironically enough. And I think I've sort of said that's just what we want to see more of. Is just him sort of taking the game by the scruff of the neck, and it's very different. I think like Joe Newell takes the game by the scruff of the neck very differently to how Dylan Levitt will take the game. I certainly think where he really needs to work hard is, I think at the moment he's really shown himself as someone who can come off the bench when players are tired, the game's stretched, and create chances and cause the opposition a lot of problems. He's going to need to work hard to be able to come in and do that straight from the start, and I think that's where he is behind Joe Newell in that aspect, obviously as well. Newell being captain and playing in that role, it's going to be more difficult for him. I think I said after the game, like I would quite like to see him in a higher up role in the midfield. At the moment, it's obviously, I think Campbell sort of picks himself really. I think he has to play, and Mariah Welsh obviously performed really well on Saturday. But I do think between him and Amos, there definitely could be a bit of competition for playing a little bit further up the pitch in certain games anyway. So I think it's more about, and just to probably finish on that point, again, he's been signed, he's kind of went through that phase of being signed by one manager, a different manager coming in, picking up an injury, not really settling, different formations and stuff like that. He's probably been a little bit the victim of where the club's been at as well. So I think now that I'm sure the way David Gray and the coaching staff are working there, and what seems to be is they're giving players very clear, very concise instructions on what they expect and what they want them to do. So I think maybe with that, he'll be able to kick on a little bit. But yeah, it's just more of what we're seeing in those little flashes from him.
Yeah, because there was, we touched on it, there was a kind of noticeable difference definitely in the Watford game, and then at the weekend. So it'll be that to me, that seemed to be instruction rather than just, I think it's maybe after the Celtic game they've maybe sat down and kind of looked at it and said, okay, Dylan, this is exactly what they need from you, because we know they've been kind of doing a lot of individual work with various players. David Gray's mentioned doing it with Josh Campbell, with Dylan Vente. So again, maybe Levitt might be the next one to sort of benefit from that kind of one-to-one input. We'll see moving forward. I was going to say the reward for getting through on Saturday was a tie at Celtic Park, but that's probably the wrong choice of words. It's about as tough. Well, it is kind of the toughest tie you could have got from that draw. Hibs will go into that as big underdogs. I've seen a wee bit on kind of social media and whatnot over the weekend, kind of people saying, well, this is what you get for not getting the job done at Celtic Hearts. Where do you stand on that? For me, I think if you're going to win this competition, you're probably going to have to beat Celtic at some point. They got caught cold at this stage last year. Who's to say it can't happen again? What do you make of the draw, and do you subscribe to that this is almost a punishment for not winning at Celtic Hearts, if that's not too strong a term?
No, it's a funny one. I like that. I think going back to the Celtic thing, the team he put out should have had enough to win that game.
Yeah,
it's not like he run. He did make a lot of changes. There were 6 changes in total. But I think when we discussed it, you were maybe talking about a couple of maybe key ones. But after that, that team should have had enough to go by that. So yeah, listen, it's not an easy draw, and I can understand why fans are frustrated by it and a bit upset. But like you said, if you're going to win one of these competitions, which is what the fans want, you're going to need to play a big team like this at some point. Now, whether that's in the final or the semi-finals, you're going to get them. I think getting them early in the season, and also the fact that we're going to be playing them the week before, it gives you a chance that if you get a decent performance in the league game, you can then go, right, what can we take from that away to Celtic Park and see what we can pick up from it. So it does give us like quite a unique opportunity, and plus it's early in the season. I mean, they've had a great pre-season, it looks so far, so that'll be difficult as well, but I'm not too upset by it. I think you would like a little bit of a cup run. I think that's maybe where fans are getting a wee bit gutted. You maybe want to try and get all the way, like get a semi-final in and whatever, and do that. And obviously getting Celtic very early limits your chances for that. But like you said, they've been caught out before at this stage in the competition. If we get a good game again, and even if we don't perform well against them in the league, there's then a chance to correct things and go away to Celtic Park and potentially try and get something out of the game. So it didn't upset me too much. I did think the reaction was a wee bit over the top about it, but I can sort of see from having got through, having like quite a awkward game against Peterhead and keeping an eye on the Queen's Park, to kind of get through that. And then to get Celtic, it was just a bit of a kick in the teeth.
Aye, a wee bit harsh. But that's cup competition, and as we say, you're probably going to have to take on one of these teams at some point. So yeah, we'll build into that one in a few weeks' time. Obviously, the hope will be by then that Hibs have added to their squad. David Gray asked about it at the weekend. I'm sure he'll be asked about it again in his press conference before St Mirren, and he's been quite consistent in how he's addressed these questions, addressed this particular topic, and quite open in saying you would have rather had more bodies in the door. Obviously made a few signings, but not for a few weeks, certainly outfield anyway. Would have rather had bodies in the door 3 or 4 weeks ago. He said, yeah, but it's not as simple as that. He has been quite consistent and saying that he is keen to get the right players, not just bodies in the door for the sake of it. We did a piece yesterday just kind of touching on, maybe looking back at getting guys in the door early is always it's always preferable, but it's not necessarily guarantees that you've done good business. I think you look at the summer 2022 transfer window, a lot of business done early, a lot of those didn't quite work out. So I mean, if we're trying to put an optimistic spin on it, you could say he's absolutely waiting for the right players to come along. We touched on a few kind of names in the frame potentially. Obviously it came out, I think it may have been possibly after the Queen's Park game originally, that young Kieran Bowie from Fulham was a potential option. In the piece yesterday, we talked a wee bit about the potentially looking at bringing back Mikola Kukarevic, who played it was popular in that initial loan spell, but it was kind of mostly injury hampered. But he did look like a very useful player. He's kind of one of many options being considered. I mean, it's hard to keep kind of talking about the search for a forward when it's there's not been too much in the way of significant concrete developments. But I think just as the games go by, it just becomes kind of ever clearer that it's what's needed. Obviously, Ellie Yuan's out for Hibs at the moment. Harry McCurdy missed the game again at the weekend. He's had a bit of a stop-start pre-season, which means even if he's in the squad for Sunday, it's probably going to be well before you see him at full fitness. So it's kind of getting to that stage where Hibs do want to get the right players in, but at the same time you could probably understand fans getting pretty agitated at this point by how close we are now to the league season, and there's still kind of holes in key areas, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think because we've been bitten before in terms of recruitment, and I do think this season there's probably going to be a real concerted effort not to go and get people in on big contracts and things like that, where we're still feeling the after effects of doing that with some players who a lot of fans would probably prefer to see leave the club. But because of the length of contract they're on, the money that they're reportedly on, it's understandable that they want to stay and fight for their place. And they could argue that there's been such a turnover in managers that they've got other chances to go and prove themselves. And I think that's where in the window, we're going to probably try and be pragmatic with what we do. And I think so far, goalkeeper, centre halves, I think that's what we needed, and we did that business nice and early. And so far, that looks like really good business. Been impressed with goalkeeper. I've not seen too much off because he's not had too much to do in these competitions, but certainly the centre halves look great. We do need a forward. And like you say, it's been fairly obvious from these last couple of games that it's really important, and especially with Yuan in the brace and looking like he's going to be out for another couple of weeks, it just leaves your options off the bench really, really limited, and you can't really change the game in that attacking third. And the names we've been linked with, obviously Kieran Bowie, has had decent loan spells in the lower leagues in England. A young guy as well, though. So, the worry would be coming in and having a lot of pressure to deliver, certainly to play his part. And Miko, when he was, like you say, he was that different profile, that David Gray's talked about in terms of the physicality of him, the way he moved and his finishing and things like that. I think he would be a real asset, and he knows the club, so that's another plus point. But it is the injuries that are a concern, and because we're low on numbers in the forward areas, you don't really want to be bringing anyone in that has maybe got a history of injuries that you might get for a couple of games and then they're out for 5-6 games and things like that. And I know you can never guarantee anything in terms of signing a player in terms of their injury, but I think he might be just too much of a risk at this stage. But in a couple of weeks' time, if we're still haven't got anybody in the door, it might be somebody that we have to go back to.
Yeah, aye. I say we'll keep you all posted on that with kind of information as we get it. Obviously, David Gray is you'll be speaking before Sunday's trip to St Mirren. So we'll just finish by looking ahead to Sunday. I mean, it's a hard game to start with. St Mirren had a great season last year. They are a difficult team to play against. Hibs had problems, shall we say, playing against them last season. 3 times, I think it was. Hibs only 4. Oh, somebody can correct me. It was a long season. Hibs won the game in the League Cup, but then obviously there was that the kind of late disappointment down in Paisley, and that kind of now very infamous 45 minutes against St Mirren at Easter Road. I mean, so it's a hard game. It's a hard place to start. I think interesting element thrown into it is the fact that St Mirren will be playing European football on the Thursday night. I mean, that I think probably, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to suggest that that probably will influence St Mirren's approach to this game in some way. I mean, because it was a tight first leg they played. There's every chance that could go the distance beyond 90 minutes. It's Hibs kind of found out last season. If you're not particularly used to it, it can be challenging to juggle that Thursday-Sunday commitment. So it's just kind of to see how do you see this, the game panning out almost, because it wouldn't surprise me necessarily if St Mirren do have a big night on Thursday and then Hibs come to Paisley on Sunday and St Mirren are maybe out of a mind to be like, okay, you can try and break us down. We're not going to, kind of do our tanking in the first 20 minutes when we've been, running around all night on Thursday. Could it be that kind of game? Is that too simplistic? How do you see it panning out?
Yeah, I watched the game last Thursday, and it was a tight game. It was a close game. They had a couple of good chances, St Mirren, that they'll probably reflect on that they maybe could have taken. So I think Thursday will be a tough game for them. Similar to last season, they've just got so much pace and power, across the pitch, but fullback areas and certainly through the middle as well. So yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic. I'm kind of intrigued to see how we'll set up and go against them as well. I know obviously last few games, especially with injuries and stuff, that we've kind of went 4 at the back and our midfield pivot and then sort of players in the attacking areas. I do wonder if we would match them up and potentially go 3 at the back if Cadden was coming back, or maybe even using Megwa in that role, or if, like you say, if we're predicting actually they're going to just sit in for at least the first the first half at least, then I would probably stick to how we've been playing the last couple of games and try and push in that direction. So I think it's a really challenging opening game for us. But with them and that competition on the Thursday, it does throw up a bit. Again, if we get that fast start, if we can get that early goal, then there's no reason why we can't go there and get a result. And it's one of those places that's difficult to go in your opening game, but if you can get a result there, even if it's just a draw or whatever, it kind of then gets your season off to a decent start, and then you can look ahead to the Celtic game with maybe a little bit more confidence. So we'll be watching on Thursday and hope the game goes the distance, and maybe there's a couple of knocks and things like that along the way.
Playing with 10 men for 85 minutes, possibly longer, something like that.
That would be ideal. But hopefully, it'll be tricky. But we've got enough there. Like you say, we got that result in the cup competition early on. We've got enough there to compete and beat that team. That's the thing. We do have enough to do that, and we have made some positive, like a positive start in pre-season. Despite the Celtic game, everything else is kind of went pretty smooth. So we should be going into it with a bit of confidence as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if I over-egged St Mirren a wee bit there when I introduced it. I mean, it is still a game that Hibs would go and be expected to win. I'm sure in that dressing room and that team, they'll be fully expecting to go and win. I'm just kind of, it is the kind of stereotypical tough place to go. Paisley, St Mirren, they're kind of one of those sides that you just always know you're never going to get an easy game. That is the kind of one thing you can guarantee from them. We'll see what happens on Sunday. But I think for now we're going to park it there for today. Thank you very much to Craig, as always, for joining us. If you're watching us on YouTube, please do consider hitting that subscribe button to continue helping us grow the channel. We'll have more building into the weekend right through this week, and then obviously we will be there on Sunday in Paisley to cover the game. So thanks as always for joining us, mate. Are you heading along to Paisley on Sunday?
I am. I will be there.
Yep. Good man. So, thanks a lot, folks, as always, for joining us. I hope you have a good rest of the week, and we'll see you again very, very soon. Cheers.
Thank you.